Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. Recently we've been focusing on the topic of intrusive thoughts, transient thoughts, OCD, HOCD, negative thoughts. So far we've had 10 segments of these videos, and now we want to proceed with the 11th, and hopefully this will also be a valuable video for you to figure things out as clearly as they should be. So we have been focusing on what are these intrusive thoughts and where do they come from. And we've discussed them in the video, I think, number 7 or 6. But now I'd like to further discuss this with you. Together we explore it. Because what I say here, you got to imagine it inwardly and see it for yourself, if it makes sense to you or not. And for our purposes, I think we should focus on the fact that these intrusive thoughts, by the way, we are discussing a particular intrusive thoughts in this discussion, which could apply to all other kind of intrusive thoughts. But for the purpose of ease of delivery, for me, we are focusing on one gender, and that is heterosexuals who would have intrusive thoughts about homosexuality. HOCD. So if others would then see the concept helpful to themselves, just see how it works for you, and hopefully that'll be useful as well. But we're now focusing on just one gender, so for people to understand the flow of discussion. So in the past, when we have intrusive thoughts, we've always tried to deal with them in different ways, and there are brilliant psychologists and psychotherapists, scientists, doctors, which I've put the link down below that you can watch their videos and be familiar with their take and how they explain it, which is very helpful. Here we want to talk about a different tangent of how to deal with HOCD. And for that seems to us that we have been approaching it in a wrong direction in some ways. While we continue educating ourselves and learning about this interesting topic, but we must focus that sometimes we are so focused on the attack that we forget about all the other things that we should focus on. It's like a chess game. When you're attacked in a chess game, all you're focused on is a defense. And you lose the sight of what is the backing of this attack? Where is it coming from? Instead, you're focusing on the attack, which is often you may actually get bamboozled or manipulated or give up the game, rather than just looking a little bit further to your right or to your left or further deeper, and you see there is no backing for that attack. So why don't we examine this in here? Are we being misdirected and focused so hardly on the attack that we are not focusing on the important parts? That where is this attack coming from? What is the credibility of this attack? What's backing this attack? Where's the roots of it? What's the identity of the attacker? What's the credibility of the attacker? Shall we? So on that note, let's focus on what is attacking us. It's a thought, right? And you look at any psychologist and any scientist, they've described that these thoughts come from nowhere, meaning it's not you. It's a thought, and thought is not you, and you are not thought. And these thoughts have nothing to do with you, but they pop up. In our discussions in video number 8, I have discussed how intrusive thoughts get a chance to actually appear at all, transient thoughts, intrusive thoughts. But here I try to focus on a different tangent of this. That could be an addition to those videos. So, when we are attacked by intrusive thoughts, where this thought come from? Where's the roots of thought anyhow that we are taking it as if it's something real? Because I think what we are misdirected is that we are not focusing on legitimacy of thought or not. We're focusing on what thought is implying, what is suggesting, what is trying to make us believe. But we're not focusing on where the thought itself is originated, where is its root, where is its credentials. So for that, we need to understand where thought comes from. I have separate videos on what is thought, but we're going to go through it here together. Look, when a caveman came out of the cave, a long time ago, before the caveman actually came out of the cave, before we were able to have the ability to create consciousness, thought, and speaking ability, there was a human being. There was a me. I was not a human being, did not have to wait for thought to become part of its apparatus, abilities to live, survive, to know what it was, who he was, what he was interested in, what his lifestyle was, what his gender was, what his habits were. All of that was known to human being way before, thousands of years before, the human being became capable of thinking or speaking. So there was a me before thought. So that means thought had nothing to do with creation of the me. My gender, my heart, my kidney, my liver, my bones, my eyes. Thought had nothing to do with it. I was created without ability of thinking or speaking. Thought hadn't been added to my capabilities and apparatus, my tools. Thought and speaking ability was added to human beings' features 30, 40,000 years ago. But before that, we were existing with eyes and ears and genitalia, our gender, what we needed to do: eat, sleep, hunt, procreate, have sex. Everything was clear to us. It wasn't like a thought came in and gave us our gender and taught us how to eat or what to do, that we need sleep or anything like that. Thought is a tool, like ability to see. Then we got an ability to speak, to think. Now, let's talk about what is this thinking. By the way, before we go further, even today, after that the human being was given the ability to think and speak and all that, when your mom and dad get together and decide on a romantic evening, and through magic of nature, one of the sperms becomes successful out of 300 million or so, get into the ovum and wins, and spark is created. That spark electrical spark is beginning of the heart. Heart starts beating. Then the rest of the things are created in the fetus by about, I guess, 18th, 20th week. Everything is created, but not thought, not speaking ability, not thinking ability. Everything else, gender, genitalia, programs in DNA, what you are, what gender you are, everything else that needs for you to be born is ready, but thought, but speaking ability. When you're born, long after that, you start recognizing, by the first year, start recognizing things and, getting to know certain routine and be trained, and then begin to have some recognition abilities and add to your feature of thinking, which comes in years later. In infancy, you're not really thinking, you're just recognizing things. And the speaking comes, a year later, right? So you can be sure that thought had nothing to do with your gender, which means thought can never have anything to do with changing your gender by suggestion or popping up intrusive thoughts or anything. But let's put all that scientific things away and focus on where thought comes from. Where is its credential? Where is its credibility? What is thought? So on that note, let's go back many, many thousands of years ago. I don't know, 100 years ago. I don't know when the caveman came out of the cave. But let's say it did. And let's say it's 30,000 years ago. Let's be right on the part that the last part of the frontal cortex was added, so we could then learn about thinking and speaking and so on, amygdala getting involved and so on. Let's talk about, let's say 40,000 years ago, caveman came out of the cave. So it's hungry naturally, right? It's been in the cave. So it goes what? It does something, whatever, some action. Let's say it goes pick up some, apple or some cherry from a tree, and on its way slips on a luscious muddy grass. Let's say those grass, and it falls and hurts his knee, so to speak. So there was an action, or whether it falls on the way to the tree or while he's trying to climb the tree, slips and falls and hits his knee somewhere. So the action of walking or going, maybe a rock rolls underneath his feet or tries to go up the tree, that action of something happened, that it fell and it hit his knee to the ground. That gives him an experience. The action brought an experience, that knee, ground, ouch. So action creates an experience. That experience gives him a knowledge. That knowledge is recorded in the memory. So far everything is automatic, yeah? Because we have that capability 24/7. We can memorize. So action, falling, knee hitting the ground, hurting, knowledge recorded. And we do a few other things in our beginning of having come out of the cave. And these experiences, these actions that we do, each have certain experiences. The experiences give us certain knowledge, and knowledge is recorded in the memory. From these bunch of stuff that we, through action, experience, knowledge, we recorded here, we are beginning to create our consciousness, memory. In the memory, there are certain things, and those things are our consciousness. The contents of the consciousness, all those experiences and the knowledge. So from all that sort of limited knowledge is recorded in the memory, we come up with another action. Another action from that thought is created from that memory. That thought leads to another action to make the thought into some action. And that action gives another experience gives that knowledge. That knowledge is recorded back here in the memory. So this continues from this field of the consciousness, this memory. Thought is born, and then thought leads to some action once we choose that thought to be turned into action, and then experience and knowledge, and then record. And these memory keeps adding up with the experiences that we do through our daily lives, and later on the experiences that we see other people are doing, and then later on in the other centuries and whatnot, we get more information through other mediums such as news, or we read books, go to school, and maybe experience things in laboratories, or we hear on we watch it on videos or movies, or we look at the history books and we learn that sort of thing that happened at a different time. And then we read novels and we read fictions and we read other things, and we become exposed of all kinds of things, and we see it in the stores and technology and other people's behavior and their lifestyle and so on. And one way or another, this field of the consciousness fills up with all kinds of information from all over, not just personally, but from the collective experiences that can exist, can be possible in the world, that has been or could be possible through other people's actions, or however it can be possible. We get to know about them, and that also becomes part of the pool of knowledge, or the memory, or the consciousness that has been exposed to such information. And then from this collective information, a thought is born. So as you can see, thought is secondary to the me. There was a me, and from the actions and experiences that the me experiences, that knowledge gives possibility for a thought to be born. So thought by itself has never existed until we existed, and we made it possible for thought to have a possibility to be part of the apparatus. But just like the eyes, when we see something, that doesn't mean that we want to be that, or we are interested in that, what we see, or we want to become that. It just means we saw something because we have a capability of vision, seeing, and we decide if the me decides if what I'm seeing, what the eye is seeing, is something that I would like to be interested or not interested, or choose to look at it or turn away, not look at it. So it's an apparatus. The same with thought. Thought is a tool that when it comes up with an idea, a suggestion, a thought, that's all it is. It has no actuality, no physicality, no existence of any sort. Then the me decides on that thought, judges that thought. Is it something that I may find it interesting to me? Yes or no? It is something that I may identify with or not, because I have my identity before thought ever existed. So everything about me is already created. There is a me. So this thought is now giving me a suggestion, is not me, it's a thought. It's a thought that is secondary, based on the experiences that I became to know about the world and the existence, whether personally or impersonally. And the thought is a residue, is a result of that field. It's not a deity, or it's not a supernatural. It's very limited to what that was exposed to. And it is not something above me. It is something that I judge it, just like a judge what my eyes see and see if I would pay attention to it or not. So let's take a short break. I'll be right back. Now we know that thought is not a know-it-all. Thought is not a boss. Thought is one of the many features that the me has at its service. Instead, we tend sometimes to think, because we have used a thought for solving things and planning, producing, doing things, then thought itself is intelligence. Thought is not intelligence. Thought is a feature, apparatus, what's the word? A tool. Thought is a tool that we're supposed to be using it in order to our advantage. But sometimes these thoughts, because they have no actuality, physicality, they are a bunch of neurons, and they are floating in the field of the known, in consciousness, reservoirs of thoughts, all kinds of thoughts, as we said. We receive it from all corners of the world in all different ways, and they're there for us to know our environment, what things to stay away from, what things to be engaged in, what things is suitable to us, what things is not. They're all there. But just because they're there, they can also, due to any malfunction, because they're neurons, they're like electrical currents, they could pop up without our interference, without our interaction, without our choice, without our permission, and they could show up in the screen of our head. And that is when we mistakenly think, because it showed up and we always use thought for our purposes in life, then it has credibility. Well, we got to go further and then see what kind of thought it is, what it is doing there, and when we know it's totally irrelevant to us, we should then ignore it rather than get engaged in trying to see what is it doing there. Just recognizing that it's in the wrong place is enough. Instead, we focus on the attack and we focus on defense, and we think we got to solve anything because that's how we've been using the mind for. And because something showed up that is contrary to what we are, our lifestyle, our inclination, I got to now deal with it or calculate it or figure it out, or if there is something there to figure out at all. These are what distracts us from the real question and real thing that we should focus on, is that this thing showed up, it shouldn't show up. Not that it has shown up so it could mean something, now I gotta find out what the meaning is. There is no meanings. Why? Because a thought has no actuality. There is no existence of thought. If you look back at thoughts and you go deeper, see where it comes from, you can see that it comes from a limited information that is supposed to be at your disposal, not that it would dictate to you what you are, but it will be judged by you that it is useful or not. Let's take a short break here. I'll be right with you. So instead of our focus going to this thought shouldn't be here, our focus goes, why is thought here? The why, it leads to what if? And all this creates what we are used to do with our apparatus of tools of thinking, is to solve something, because a problem has been thrown at us, has been presented, and we are conditioned, how we've conditioned our brain through childhood, through our life, mathematical equations and problem solvings and all these things that we used our mind for positive things, to figure out things, that kicks in that habit, that conditioning, that this is not what we have to do. A problem has been presented, we recognize as a problem, is not factual, is not true, is opposite of what I am, and it is attacking my identity. So now I have to figure it out and I have to solve it. So we go on doing what we always did with this tool of thinking, instead of just leaving that aside and keeping our focus on, this is irrelevant, it shouldn't be here, it's irrelevant to me, and I now need to find out how to deal with this rather than how to solve it. There's nothing to be solved. So focus on the fact that it shouldn't be here. It puts us at a confidence that we all deserve to focus on what it is that we should be doing, that we are doing in our life, steady as she goes, everything as usual, until that malfunction figures it out by itself and corrects itself. Why I say that? Because it's very simple, that when it comes to some physical malfunctions, we're quite clear about it, and we don't go any further than, this is a fact, it's a malfunction. Like if we have a dysentery, a diarrhea. So when there is a diarrhea, quickly recognize this is not normal, this is not me, this is not what I would like, this is not my interest, this is not what I would like it to continue, this is like not what my choice would be, this is not what I like to be. So it is very clear for you that this is a malfunction, not a normal me. And you leave it at that. Now you try to keep your life as it was, making sure you take good care of yourself and continue your life without any hesitation of, oh, this diarrhea means that I like it because it's here. You don't say that, you just, no, it's a malfunction. Now I gotta continue my good life and then and maybe get whatever I need to do, eat maybe, I don't know, rice and yogurt and whatnot, what is needed, or exercise less or more to get that corrected. That's all, because you have no doubt in the incorrectness of this thing, in malfunction of this thing, in abnormality of this thing. You don't have any question about that. Therefore, you, with confidence, you continue your lifestyle and making sure you take good care of yourself and you create relaxing environment and so on, until then you get back to your normal self, because you're confident that it will become normal self, because you're definitely 100% clear that this is abnormality. But when it comes to our mind, we somehow seems to not understand this is no different than a diarrhea. Something has gone wrong and I'm getting all these suggestions, thoughts, things that are abnormal. They're not me. But yet, because it's in my head, and that's where the screen is, the images and so on, and urges and suggestions, and you're accustomed, conditioned to find your thinking or your mind as credible, so you think whatever comes up to your head, it must be credible. No. We can have a very good car and it could break down just because it's a good model and a good manufacturing. That doesn't mean it's always going to work perfectly. There is malfunctions in it, especially if it's mostly electrical system, which our brain is. But we bypass that. We unfortunately don't focus on that. So you need to focus on the credibility, if you haven't so far figured it out, that these malfunctions have no business being there, and that's what you should be focused on, not why they're there and I should prove that it shouldn't be there. No, none of that. Then let's now move a little bit further into where we started to talk about, where the background and credibility of thought lies, and if there is any. So for that, let's think about, focus on, there is something that you have created that is watching your thoughts, which that is watching your thoughts are another thought that you have created. Sometimes you have created this illusory presence of something from outside is judging your thoughts and looking at what you're doing or thinking, and then giving you suggestions or corrections or advice based on what that thought is, and so on and so forth. So have you noticed and asked yourself, who is actually watching those thoughts that are watching these thoughts? Let's leave that there and we'll come back to it. Just have a thought of it. So when we talked about the relationship between consciousness and thought and how thought is born and what's the roots of it all, we know that sometimes these thoughts pop up in the form of intrusive thoughts, that you are this, you're that. If you're heterosexual, it says you're homosexual, or you like to be, you want to kiss a man, you want to be with a same gender, and creates these thoughts. And we talked about in different the other videos that a thought can create an emotion, and because that emotion is real at that moment, then you think the thought is real. Because thought that you have in your memory, all kinds of information in your memory, there are possibilities that thought can clearly create emotion, even if that what you're thinking is not physically or actuality. For example, if you think about a sour fruit, a sour grape, unripe sour or sour fruit of some kind. Different cultures have different sour fruits. A lemon. If you think about lemon, nice, juicy, fresh, yellow lemon, or lime. You squeeze the lime in your mouth. See, right now you're salivating. There is no lemon here. But you're thinking about lemon, and you can tell what lemon is. So there is an emotion created when there is no actuality, there is no reality. So thought can tap into what is known to us in form of information. Worldwide, all kinds of information has found their way into our consciousness. We've heard about different news, different things, different existence of different things and lifestyles and whatever it is out there, not necessarily personal experiences, but the information in general somehow has gotten into our library of information, and we are aware of our environment, what things are in here. Rocks, stones, steel, fire, wind, rain, how it is to be wet, we have seen it, and what is the taste of this, taste of that, this food or that food. All of these are available. And the emotion can be created by thinking about whatever it is, a certain kind of emotion, whatever emotion. So when thought, an intrusive thought, shows up and suggests to you something and says, no, you like it, and then you simply have a certain anxiety because you're focusing on an attack has been made on your identity, which is abnormal, that is not your interest is, now you're trying to defend it. That whole idea, defense and attack, creates an emotion. That's the anxiety. But some people think that anxiety is in relation to interest in the suggested thought, which is, again, you gotta be mindful of that. You gotta know how the mind works, how these emotions are created and on what basis, what this emotion has tapped into in the memory files, that it doesn't have anything similar to this at all, so it finds the next emotion that it could describe anything sexual that it has had experience with, and brings that as the next possibility of explaining this suggestion, how the emotion of it would be. And then one would make a mistake, say, oh, I had an emotion. which we discussed that in a different video with the title of I Felt Something. But coming back to our discussion, so when you think about this sour fruit and the emotion, a reaction, a physical reaction is created, that's how we human beings are equipped to create physical reaction to a thought. So when an intrusive thought comes in and you have a physical reaction, that is not in favor of the intrusive thought, that is just how we are. We can have physical reactions to a thought, and since we don't have a direct information on that and direct emotional file that, we go into our memory and find something similar that is about sex, and then they all get mixed up because that's all there is, and then you get bamboozled thinking, oh, that means that it might be right, the thought, maybe I like it. The accepting suggestions of something that doesn't even exist is preposterous. So let's imagine, let's focus on why we say it doesn't exist. We talked about that your thoughts are being watched by another thought. And we asked, what is realizing that that thought is now watching another thought? So let's talk about the intrusive thought. Let's say the intrusive thought shows up and suggests to a heterosexual that you're going to turn gay, or you can be gay, or you are gay, or you want to be homosexual, any kind of a homosexual thought, that it is not normal to the heterosexual, it's opposite of what he is. So then you're bogged down with the fact that there's an attack, and you go on defense, and you forget totally about where does this accusation or suggestion is coming from. Where is the roots of it, and where's the credibility of the suggesting entity? Or is there a credibility at all? So if you go ask that thought, where do you come from? And think about it inwardly. It's not your interest. You didn't intend it. You didn't invite it, but it's there. So where did it come from? It comes from the pool of the information that is there, that there has been a malfunction that has found its way to pop up in your screen when you didn't even have anything to do with it. Involuntarily, a separate system showed up. Not be known of you, anything, you didn't know anything about it. So when you look into it, the thought is coming from another thought. Because if you ask the thought, if the thought could talk, say, where did you come from? Well, the thought says, well, I come from a thought, an information, a knowledge. Really? You came from a knowledge? Where did the knowledge come from? The thought says, it came from experience. Oh, really? Experience. So where did that experience come from? Thought says, came from an action. Oh, really? An action. What action? Thought says, action. Action. It's in the memory. Yeah, it's in the memory, but it's not mine. I get memory information from all over the world, through all kinds of medium, movies, internet, news, history, just awareness of what lifestyles and things are in this environment that I live in. All that information has come to my library, the library being the consciousness. All these informations being the books that have been deposited in that library, not necessarily by me personally, by many other people who have somehow gotten their information and book deposited in that library. I know about these things, but knowing about it, it doesn't represent my action, my experience, or the knowledge that I personally gathered and deposited in the memory. You, thought, are bringing something that has got nothing to do with me, but exists in my consciousness, because that is what human consciousness is capable of, by collecting information to know about its environment, and also to know what things to stay away from, what things to be towards, go towards, what things to be aware of, what things to protect myself. I know about, let's say, a gun if it's pointed at me. But does that mean anything that I have a gun? I have that information. It's come to me, so I know what to protect myself when I see one, when I see things, actions like that, what things are not within my interest to go kill someone, or what things, for example, I have information that if I have a raw turmeric, that I have read what turmeric does, and I have read that it's not palatable, so naturally I've read how it tastes, bitter, this and that. So I have that information, so when I need to know what to stay away from, and there is a turmeric on the table, I don't have to have tried it to know that I should stay away from it, because I know it's going to make me vomit. So naturally, that information is going to be helpful to me to know what things to stay away from, what things that I know it'll be okay for me. So that information is there, and you're telling me the information that you brought was in my consciousness, so therefore it's got anything to do with me? No, I've got millions and billions of information there. So if you further that question, say, okay, so that's another thought. Where is that thought's actuality? The thought, intrusive thought, says there is no actuality. So I say, if there is no actuality, what are you based on? Non-existence. You have no truth, you have no reality, you have no actuality. You're based on, your suggestion is based on availability of some information that we just proved has got nothing to do with me. So what substance is it? What are you? What existence do you have? And you can see the further you go back, you'll see there's this thought and another thought and another thought, and none of them have any existence, actuality, reality at all. So they're just a poof. Something that somehow found its way into the presentation center of your brain as a suggestion, and you reacting to an attack because it's opposite of you, it's not you, and you're focused on the attack and defending it, and you forget about the real question. It shouldn't be here. That's all. It's a malfunction, like the diarrhea. That's it. I don't have to prove to it that I don't like diarrhea. I know I don't like it. I don't have to prove to it that I'm not going to turn gay, because I know I'm not, because I know I'm heterosexual. I don't have to prove to it that I don't like something that I'm not, because what am I proving to? Something that doesn't exist, a thought. So I shouldn't be bogged down by dialogue, entertaining, paying attention to the suggestion of any kind. Instead, I should simply stay on my course, do what I do, take best care of myself, take stressful stuff away from myself, focus on my plans and goals, and have that confidence that I always had, knowing that this is a diarrhea, nothing else. I should focus on my well-being, and then let the time take its course and disappear, dissipate, and decimate this thing, which is just like any physical challenges, diarrhea or cold or whatnot. It can come and go, and let it come and go, until eventually it sees that every time it shows up, there are no interest, there is no involvement, there is no dialogue, there is no attention, and then it becomes retrained, the brain, that these sort of thoughts should be found where the holes are that seeps through, and plug it by simply not paying attention. And even you don't plug it, the thoughts learn that there is no entertainment there. There is no seriousness to them. Nobody takes them seriously, and they will simply not be considered a threat again. Once you don't consider something a threat, you don't go to protect anything. When you don't go to protect anything, there is no energy exchange. When there is no energy exchange, it doesn't fuel the balloon to stay up, the intrusive thought to stay energized. It just puffs down because there is nothing to hold it up. There is no involvement. Everybody stays away from it. It's like what's going around these days with the social distancing. So if you socially distance yourself from these thoughts, they'll eventually be retrained that, look, I shouldn't go there. And that would be the end of it. So when you go deep to the roots of thought and you see the thought is based on another thought and then another thought is watching it, and which thought has caused that thought to show up, and you see to the end of it there's just thought but nothing factual or actual, and all you have to focus on the fact is that this thought there's no business being here, it's irrelevant to me, and I should only focus on the fact that it shouldn't be here, not why it's here. There is no why. There's never going to be a why to be answered to. Therefore, you can focus on your life, relax, and steady as she goes. Hope that was helpful to you, and I'll talk to you soon.